Hello, my friend, and welcome back to the channel. I know it has been a while since I've uploaded. I will be getting back to more frequent posting here on YouTube, but wanted to drop this holiday special as we approach Christmas, and this will be sort of wrapping up this series that we've been doing for the past couple of years on the Crypt Rick radio show. So this is an audio-only radio podcast that will be diving into the origins of Christmas and really breaking it down and giving commentary from a pagan and animistic perspective, which I feel is not only unique but very necessary to truly understand the traditions that are persistent in our modern world and where they actually come from and what was the actual essence behind these practices. So I hope that you will walk away from this episode with a more deep and wise perspective full of insights on the tradition of Christmas. Do stay and watch to the end, and I will also link at the end of this episode as well as down in the description to the playlist so that you can watch the other holiday origin segments that we've done on this show. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy. Please like the video and subscribe if you haven't already, and stay tuned.
Welcome back, everybody. Of course, if you are tuning in, you know, got a great show lined up for you. Of course, I'm going to have two great guests with me once again. They're going to be joining me. They've been on the show a few times before, and it's going to be a great conversation. I'm looking forward to it, as I always do. I'm always up for a great conversation, learning new things. If you guys have been following me, listening to me, following any of my work, I do know that I've been kind of doing an origin series with my guest, and we're kind of breaking down the origins of certain holidays. And so far, we have done one on the origins of Halloween. We've done one on the origins of Valentine's Day. I think we did one on the origins of Easter. So what do you think we are going to be talking about this show? Well, since I said we only got 5 weeks till the day, it's going to be the origins of Christmas. And as anyone knows that listens, I'm very fascinated with the origins of things. I like to know where things come from, especially the holidays that we all, or most of us, I don't want a blanket statement, many of us celebrate. And Christmas is a huge one. So that's what we're going to get into. That's what my guests are here to join me to talk about. I'm going to let them basically take over the show and kind of break down the origins of Christmas. And so my guest is none other than Will Keller and Logan Hart. So I want to welcome you both to the Crypt. Welcome, guys.
Thanks, Rick. It's glad to be back.
Awesome.
What's up? Glad to be here.
Thank you guys for being here. This is such I think, an important little series that we're doing, and one that I think people are going to get a lot of value of. And I've got a lot of positive feedback from is breaking down these holidays as I was speaking. And I think Christmas is a big one. I think this is one that a lot of people celebrate. It's Christmas crazy around where I live. I'm sure it's like that for most people. As I was just saying, that's no joke. Right the day after Christmas, I had to go to the store and it was Christmas everywhere. I'm like, oh my God, there was just pumpkins here a day ago. Like, what is going on? So it's a big holiday. So do you want to kick it off, Will, and kind of wherever you want it? I'm going to let you kind of take it where you want from the start, and let's get into the origins of Christmas.
Yeah, that sounds good. And we definitely have a good amount of ground to cover, but I always think it's important to kind of lay the framework, the starting point, so to say. And yes, this will kind of complete this series. And why is understanding the origins of these holidays, these holy days that are so predominant in our modern culture? And although they have changed over the years, their own evolution, they are rooted in truth. They are rooted in something real and based in nature, and energy as well, and is tied in with our own awareness and consciousness, which affects our behavior and actions. And this is why millions upon billions of dollars are invested, not only from the social engineers, right, and the parasite class, but also the investment from the people. It's like, where are you putting your attention? Where are you putting your money and the value? And a lot of that comes from these quote unquote holidays. So understanding the origins, meaning its source, its root cause, is extremely critical. And of course, like Logan and I have both said, right? Awareness reveals choice. So understanding a more deep and rooted in truth, um, awareness of these holidays makes you reflect, and it informs your behavior, and you can see with clarity on what is going on, not only in the world but in your own local environment, and within yourself, your own family dynamic. So I think it's important to explore and understand these origins. And hey, we have to be honest with ourselves. The holidays now are, rooted in mind control in the modern time, right? So Logan and I are going to talk about kind of the framework to jump it off, which is uh, always rooted in animism and paganism. And I'll pass it over to Logan in just a second. He can kind of lay that groundwork on what that is. But we will say certain terms and phrases where it's going to test people's programming. Right, the religious programming is still a mind virus that's embedded in the majority of people, even if they think they do not identify with certain religions. Right, so that's really important, and that's what we're here to do as truth seekers and truth speakers, is to kick up the dust and kind of rattle some nerves to help spark critical thinking and awareness. So I think starting with what animism and paganism is will absolutely lay the groundwork, because this has been the whole premise of this series, right? All of these holidays, their origin is based upon this actual framework of animism and paganism.
That's right, and that's a great point. Well, and I'm going to kick it right to you, Logan. Like, let's break it down. Animism, paganism, wherever you want to take this, the floor is yours.
Absolutely. It's a great setup and great introduction there, Will. And this is one of my favorite topics, not just from enjoyment, but I believe from a fundamentals perspective. These are the most basic and important building blocks of any kind of spiritual understanding and operating system. And so that's exactly what we're talking about here. I always like to start with animism as the mindset, and then the paganism is simply the practices and traditions and the rituals and all of that as expression of the animistic mindset. So what is animism? I like to think of it as it's the mindset of the first Hermetic principle, which is all is mind. And you could spend a lifetime and hundreds of books exploring just that one concept and all of its implications and philosophical, you know, interconnectedness of everything. But ultimately, it is the all is in that statement. The all is mind. So the all to me is kind of a very succinct way of describing God, or whatever word you like, God, not in a religious concept, but in a cosmic architect and divine intelligence that is permeating the universe, that is the universe itself and whatever is outside of the universe, right? Because it is the all. It can't be the all if there's any segmentation or something outside of it, right? It has to be all encompassing. And so to me, it's setting up the worldview of spirituality in the sense that we are all like fractals of this divine cosmic intelligence that are experiencing the mind of God from inside it. We're all actors in God's dream, if you want to look at it that way. And so in that sense, that gives you a very practical and realistic way to interpret this notion that we're all one. Everything is one, right? This kind of gets thrown around almost like a Hallmark card or something, kind of a slogan. But that's what that really means, is that we are all part of the same dream and energy field that we are sourced from. And that makes us all connected in this way. And this is why the pagan and animistic mindset is so essential to understanding that, because it's like, what does that actually mean? And then what does that mean for my life? You have to understand what you are and your place in the grand scheme of things. To me, that's kind of what those questions, those big questions that spirituality is they're supposed to be helping you to understand, is like, who am I and what's my place in the universe? And so that interconnectedness that is nature is the crux of that entire question, and what that's leading you towards that truth and understanding of yourself. So when you look to nature as the source of all truth, because that is where anything you can get from a book, or fantasize about, it must all come from nature, or at least be tested in nature. And just to clarify further, what do I mean by nature? I don't just mean trees and birds and what you see when you go to a park or something like that. I'm talking about the natural world, that which exists as a part of creation that is not man-made. So that's what I mean by that, is it's the natural world and the laws that govern it. And that is the true way of discovering truth, by creating our own experiences and interacting with that world. And that feedback that we get is where all wisdom comes from. So that's where you're kind of getting to the paganism aspect. Once you understand everything that I just said, okay, now how do I live and operate in the world? And the way that we've always done that for thousands and thousands or hundreds of thousands of years before religion came along is we practiced nature-centric rituals and traditions and customs, and they were all circled around the seasons and all of the natural cycles of nature and this sort of thing. And so that's kind of all that's my stepwise progression all the way up to the topic that we're having today. This is a great and beautiful and rich expression of what I've just described. It's the traditions and the lore, right? The mythology and the multiculturalism aspect to this, because we're talking about a point in time and a season, but yet we have all these different traditions that were built on top of that, depending on what culture and part of the world you might find yourself in, right? But it's all kind of pointing to the same thing, and that part is where we come to that understanding that truth comes from nature. And so you have your own pathway to get there, but you have all these different traditions that kind of lead to the same place, and these sort of universal symbolic and allegorical elements to this tradition that has that similarity or that continuity to it. And that's kind of the point of all of this, is that the truth is higher than all religions, but there's many pathways to it, and there's different ways that we can interact with it, but truth itself remains consistent.
Yeah, well, you've really said a lot there, Logan, and I'm just they're really listening and taking in what you're saying, because I'm here to learn like everyone else. I really am, and that's why I had to get you guys on here, because of the other episodes that we've done. It's like you said, getting into this, because I sit and I think, like when I was 20, I didn't think the way I do now. And I think that, you brought up some things about, this, we're trying to figure out why we're here and what is our purpose. And I definitely think that with the way the world is now, there is this disconnection from nature and the way that you're describing it, not just, trees and going out and sitting in a park. I'm glad you kind of said that, because as soon as you bring up nature, I run into people thinking that you got to go out and start hugging trees and stuff. And I'm glad you kind of really broke down this something different. That's part of it, but it's not the whole picture. Do you want to add anything to what Logan said, Will?
Oh no, I think he did a fantastic job, and it's really important to have that framework going into the origins of Christmas, right?
Yeah.
So essentially, this time period, this what we say a holiday is actually based on something real in nature, and that is 100% the winter solstice, something that has been recognized and honored and venerated since time immemorial, right? I mean, it's been dated, 3,000 to 10,000 BC that there's been winter solstice festivals, right? An honoring of the earth and mainly the sun. This is where these holidays come from. With the winter solstice, it is the birth and the path of the sun, which we can kind of dive into a little bit more. But I think it's good to kind of touch on, majority of people when they think of Christmas, origins of Christmas, right? It's based in Christianity, right, from the name itself. But that's relatively modern compared to its history and its origins, right? I'm talking about the winter solstice. Even modern Christmas now with, the gifts, the presents, and the tree. I mean, that's fairly modern. I mean, we're talking about, most people can kind of recognize the Coca-Cola Santa in the 1930s. That's pretty much where modern Christmas and the Santa image and the materialism really started taking off. Sure, there was Christmas before then, right? But there are time periods, even in American history, where the Christian version of that holiday was revolted against. So it's had this ebb and flow, and it's evolved and been deconstructed and reinvented so many different ways throughout an ample amount of cultures and time periods. Yet that constant is the winter solstice itself, because that's exactly what the holiday, that time period, is based upon. And all ancient cultures have celebrated a winter solstice, the rebirth of the sun, right? Because we're in the winter. What's the winter? It's the season of death. If you think back to our ancient past, the winter was the toughest time of the year, right? You had to prepare for that time period, depending on what climate you live in, right? It's cold, it's snowy, there's not as available food sources, etc. So you really had to prepare for it, and many people died during that time. It's also a time of connection and internal community, not only with oneself, to go within into the darkness of the unconscious and the subconscious mind, right? Even nowadays, when it's rainy, snowy, cold, you want to be indoors by the fire, warm. And that's really where the contemplation and that mentalism, sowing the seeds of mentalism, really kind of come down for that introspection in this time period, and then leading up to the rebirth of, or the rebirth or the awakening of that mentation. Even in communities, there was a gathering to stay together for warmth, support during this time period. So the winter solstice, primarily, it's around December 21st, 22nd, right? And this time period is when the sun itself is at its lowest position, right? It actually it's, if you're just observing the sun, right, and it's in its astrological placement, it seems like it actually stands still for those 3 days, right? It can be interpreted as the sun has died, right? It's at its lowest point in the sky. You're going through the longest night is the winter solstice, right? And then after then, it starts moving from that 0 degree into that journey of rebirth or reawakening into its higher positioning, into coming into spring. So the sun itself appears to be at a standstill on the horizon. And then of course, yes, when it moves northward again in its ascent. So I think that's important to kind of touch on, where it's rooted in nature, like Logan was talking about, the animist mindset and pagan practices. And again, there is no formal pagan practice. This is why it is, based in animism. Paganism is as diverse and as a wide variety as there are types of people and personalities on the planet. So that practices can be very different upon locations, and time periods, etc. But yet that constant is the winter solstice itself, the event. So I think that's kind of important to jump off right there.
Yeah, that's killer, Will. And I like that we're kind of talking, because I find the importance of, and you touched on this perfectly, is about this. When you're into the winter solstice, it's that time of doing the work on yourself. At least that's how I kind of look at it, because where I live here in Canada, it's already getting cold, and winters here are long and cold. And you make some great points. Like, it's tough, and depending where you live, I couldn't imagine, what it would be like, say, 200 years ago here where I live. The importance of everything to make it through one of these winters. And in other areas where it gets super, super cold. Like, I mean, you're not foraging anything. It's a season of death. Absolutely. And it's kind of amazing, because we're kind of talking about nature. Just, I'm really observant about the animals in my yard and stuff, and watching them, and that's this whole time for them, all during the summer, the spring and summer and fall, is them getting ready for this time, this winter solstice. And it's no different kind of with humans. Yeah, I mean, technology has kind of made it easier, but I'm just thinking back, just not too long ago in our past, how tough of a time of season this was. And I like it because you touched on this. It's this time of reflection, which I think people need to do, and are not doing it. It's this foundation I keep coming back on. It seems that this part that people are lacking. And I think this is the perfect time. I see the symbolism and the meaning of it. So I just wanted to add that in. Great points, Will and Logan. Do you want to add on to what Will was saying, Logan?
Oh yes.
Perfect.
Plenty. Yeah, there's just so much here. I know Will and I are just bursting with excitement and information to try to fit it all in. So we'll do what we can here. But yeah, the flow of this is going really well, because from here I can just kind of go into first just retouching briefly on the significance of the time, because that's really the sort of anchor of all of this. All of the lore and mythology, whether it's Santa Claus or Christ or Odin or any of that, is based on the time period, and then that is where you're extrapolating the symbolism, which is absolutely vital to understand the importance of symbolism when you're looking at anything pagan, because paganism and occultism are virtually the same thing, with a slightly different definition and packaging, but the core of it is very similar, and symbolism is a fundamental component of occultism, because it's encoding knowledge in very simple allegory and imagery, essentially. So everything is built on this solstice date. It's the midpoint of winter. It's the shortest day, the longest night. It's pretty much it's the death and rebirth of the sun, as Will said. And just that one thing, there's so much you could go off of when you realize that the sun, sun, is the son, son of God, right? Which is the Christ figure. And so, just as, like it was said, Jesus died and then returned, that is saying that the sun has died, or the light of the longest day or the shortest day is now that cycle is now turning back the other direction, where from there the days will start getting longer, the nights will get shorter, and the sun has returned. So that's what we're talking about symbolically as a theme. You have this idea of returning light, restoring hope, renewal, because now as winter wanes, it gives way to spring, where life returns, the flowers bloom, the birds are chirping, and all of that, right? And this is just an ongoing process. That's what pagans understood, is that it's infinite. It's like the Ouroboros. It's just circular. You're going around the sun. Everything is circular, right? So, it's really about the solstice, and that's where all of these different traditions kind of sprang in context to where and when it was being recognized. And so long before the concept of Christ, these were pagan traditions built around the solstice. And so for the Norse and Germanic, you had Yule, was a multi-day midwinter festival with bonfires symbolizing the return of the sun, evergreen trees symbolizing the life that never dies. There again, you have that infinity theme, that return, that circular, aspect. The wild hunt of Odin was also, related to Christmas, because it was going on during the winter solstice and during Yule. That sort of evolved elements into the Santa myth, because they, if you look at Odin and Santa, they're a little bit similar there. And Odin flew an 8-legged horse called Sleipnir. It's kind of reindeerish, right? Long cloak, all this kind of stuff. And then you had the shamanism of Siberia and other Arctic regions that used Amanita muscaria mushrooms as a plant medicine. And there's a whole, and if anyone really wants to deep dive on this, there's a fascinating film that covers this and a lot more, called The Pharmacratic Inquisition. And you can find this on YouTube for free. It's really, really good. But they discuss this where, the Amanita muscaria is red with white spots. Santa Claus is red with white spots. They used a sleigh pulled by reindeer to go around and deliver plant medicines, these mushrooms that were dried on the mantelpiece by hanging them, just like the stockings. These mushrooms were symbiotic with the evergreen trees that grew off of their root systems, hence presence under the tree. So there's all these correlations that are occulted, that are fascinating to dig into where all this stuff comes from. And you'll see there's a lot of mushroom decorations that for like tree ornaments. You see a lot of especially older decorations that are Santa that are much more mushroom oriented or have mushroom imagery in them. And I mean, it's such a rabbit hole. I'm trying to keep this kind of succinct, but I'm just painting the picture. You have these different regions and these very rich traditions with a lot of symbolism that if you really look into it, you'll recognize it's very familiar. And we've grown up with these, but never knowing where they actually came from. The mistletoe was a very sacred plant of the Druids. This idea of kissing under the mistletoe was an old fertility blessing. Cutting mistletoe was a sacred ritual. There's just an overview there without getting too in the weeds, because it's very easy to do. I mean, I could do multi-hour presentations just on that bit that I shared there.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, Logan, because I'm kind of taking notes here. What was the name of that show that they can find on YouTube, you said? Because I definitely want to check that out.
It's called The Pharmacratic Inquisition. So PHARMACRATIC Cratic, Pharmacratic Inquisition.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, because I will look this up too. I promise everyone listening. As soon as this is over, I'm going to be diving into that because what you guys are already talking about is so interesting to me. And I think a lot of people wonder where these traditions come from. I know in my life I'm like, why do we hang stockings by the fire? And why do we bring in a tree? And why do we do all of these things? And I think a lot of people, they're just, it's what they've always done. I've heard people say that, like, well, my family's always done this. But I've always kind of been the person to ask why. Like, there's got to be a reason that we do these things. Like, why? And, and you kind of broke that down perfectly, Logan, of some of these traditions and where they came from. Now, I did not know about Odin, and I didn't know about the similarity to the reindeer and stuff like that, because I also wonder that too. And why does Santa have a sleigh and they fly and all this weird stuff? Like, it's just like, where does this come from? Is this just a creative mind, or is this just is there some origins that there's like in traditions that this is actually based in, which you are explaining perfectly? Would you like to add to this, Will? Because I do know you guys got a lot of cover, so I don't want to talk too much and give it the floor to you guys.
Yeah, no, that's great. There's so much there. I mean, even to kind of build on there with the deities, right? So it's not just Odin or the Christ archetype. It's Mithras, Horus, Hercules, Sol Invictus. Like, there's so many that throughout the millennia that are archetypes and they're representations of the sun during the solstice time, right? So it's really the mythology. It's the stories that are passed down through the generations, through time, but it's the representation and the meaning behind those stories, which is important, very important. I mean, Christianity, for example, what the Christ figure is, right? Like Logan said, the S-O-N, it's really the S-U-N. So it is the story of the sun, S-U-N itself. And there's so much there that is fascinating. Saturnalia, so Saturn itself, right, is the planet basically of karma, right? And what's Santa Claus? Has a list and he's checking it twice, gonna find out if you're naughty or nice. So there's a representation there. Even the Christmas tree itself, looking down from the bird's eye view, it is a spiral, right? You put a star on the top, which symbolizes Polaris. It's the North Star. It's that orientation. At the base of the tree itself is the sun, the center point. And then you place the planets, the bulbs, or the lights around the tree. So it's the story of the sun and the planets, the celestial bodies, the representations of that tell a story. And there, all kinds of symbolism is packed within that, which is extremely fascinating. And like I said, it gives meaning to the story. And where is that meaning applicable? How is it practical? How can it be applied? And I think that's where the magic of that awareness comes into, right? So we can utilize this time period for personal development and for action itself. Because like I said in my earlier statement, right, the social engineers are using that. The parasite controlling class is using this time period. There's a certain type of energy that is active in the ether all throughout the planet, right? And even condensed in certain areas. So that is being utilized for certain outcomes and certain influence. And this is where kind of the empowerment comes from. So yeah.
Very super interesting. And Logan kind of touched on this just recently about the all and how we're all connected. And it's kind of tying into what you just said, Will, about how the social engineers are very aware of this. And I think some people have a hard time realizing that we really are truly all connected and connected through nature. And this, it's this big should be this big symbiotic circle that takes place. And the social engineers and whatever you want to call them, are very aware of this, and the reason that they manipulate it is because I think they know the power of it. And these are the type of conversations I think need to happen more. I think people have to start questioning things and why they believe certain things. And that's why I think this Origin series is so powerful, because these are holidays that we all kind of participate in. Most, I'm not saying all, I never want to, like I said, blanket statement, everything, because people get upset when you do that, but most celebrate a lot of these holidays and not even really understanding where they come from. So I think you guys are doing a really important piece of work here by breaking down these holidays that we all celebrate. So yeah, I'm just keeping an eye on the time because I don't want to dive into, I'm always famous, guys, for getting into a big topic 3 minutes before a break. So do you want to add anything, Will or Logan? And then we'll dive in deeper in the second hour for sure.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that the cultural religions such as Christianity, right? There's overlays, right? So they laid a historical, quote unquote, historical story onto a much older solar astrological pagan celebration, or a natural cycle, right? The cycle of darkness and light. So it's these overlays. And what happens when you do that? It's not just Christianity. All cultural religions do that. This is what they do, right? They lay these overlays on there for kind of influence and control. And understanding those origins is extremely important. And a lot of people have a problem with even the word pagan. If Christianity is your pathway to spirituality, then it's important to test those belief systems, right? Question even yourself and what you are celebrating, what you are investing your energy into. I put up a Christmas tree. I do gifts and that kind of stuff, but there's a difference between advocating for a certain story. People spend hundreds of, even thousands of dollars during this time period and never ever think about the actual astrological or the energetic implications of this time period. Yeah. Right. So it has a very materialistic root on there, and it's all about static noise and misdirection from what? From truth in nature. Because as soon as you're separated from that, you're separated from yourself, and we are separated from each other.
Perfectly said. Yeah. And I think and you're touched on something really important. Well, now I'm going to let you kind of build onto that, Logan, right before break. But I remember seeing a presentation by Mark Passio, and he broke down what we're speaking about the winter solstice and all the, the zodiac and all of that kind of stuff. And that's why I was like, wow, like there's something that's so much deeper than this surface thing that we all experience and we see, and what they're promoting is what we're talking about, this modern day variant of these holidays. And when I saw somebody like Mark really break it down, I was just like, wow. And it makes sense. And it's really you guys are tying it in perfect, because it's basically what he was saying. And I was just like, this is so much deeper than people realize. And you said that with how it has the origins going way, 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 way back, and they've been kind of hijacked and built upon. That's so important for people to know. And you make a great point. I was going to bring this up, Will, and I'm glad you did, about when people hear pagan. I can just imagine people going, oh, and they got this image or this thought of what paganism is. So maybe, Logan, you want to touch on that right before break about, how people, what Will said, and then how people, when they hear paganism or paganism, they get this immediate reaction.
Yeah. And then that's why we started out first thing, trying to clarify when we use that word, this is what we mean. Try to let go of your own presuppositions and biases and actually hear where we're coming from and what we're talking about here, because it's nothing evil or scary or anything. And you can also apply modern day understanding of ethics and morality to older pagan practices. Just because we say we're pagans doesn't mean we advocate for everything that every pagan ever did and we're into human sacrifice and all that crazy stuff. It's a working spiritual system. It's not a static thing. It's not about living in the past or anything like that. And real quick before break, I also wanted to add, Another great film that people can check out is called Zeitgeist. If anyone hasn't watched that, that also goes into very good detail about this that we're talking about the symbolism of the solstice and how Christianity basically hijacked, these concepts and turned them into that. But, just like with anything of the dark occult and the mind control matrix, they can't stop nature. Nature is infinitely more powerful than anything they can do. So the only thing that they can do is hijack and distort. They can't kill the signal, but they can hijack it and distort it and turn it into, and just basically kind of weaponize it. But the moment you get back to the source that it all came from, because they have no creative power of their own, when you come back to the source of what that originally came from, you're reclaiming that power, and you're basically undoing what they're doing to it, and rendering it useless as a control, at least on yourself. And that's why we do these kind of shows, to share the knowledge, shed the light on these things, and evil and darkness can't survive when you shine a light on it. So that's what it's all about.
Well said.
Well said. Yeah, and that's so true. I say that all the time, that it does not like the light. It doesn't like being exposed. And I think we're doing a great job of kind of really diving into this. And we still got a second hour coming up. So I ask that please everybody stick around, because I'm sure hour 2 is going to be just as great. I have 2 great guests here who have taken the time to come and really break this down. We are doing the Origin series. And as I said at the start of the show, we've already broken down Valentine's Day, Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Easter, and it was only fitting, this close to what we're speaking about, Christmas, that we dive into the origins of Christmas. So please stick around. My guest, Will Keller, Logan Hart, will be back right after this break. Hour 2 coming up. Welcome back, everybody. We are already into hour 2. I hope you guys did stick around, because hour 1 was truly amazing, and I'm sure hour 2 is going to be no different. We are finishing up on the Origin series that I've been doing with my amazing guest, Will Keller and Logan Hart. I'm going to make sure at the end of this show that I provide all the links so you can check out both of their work and find the Origins work that we did on, as I said, at the end of the first hour. We've already done one on Valentine's Day. We've done it on Easter, Thanksgiving, and Halloween. So we had to wrap it up and make this complete. Of course, because of the time of year, we are doing the origins of Christmas. So let's go ahead and dive into this. I want to give you the floor again, Will. You can start it off again if you'd like, because I know you guys both have a lot to cover. So I'm going to try to get out of your guys' way and let you guys get to the meat of this and really break it down like you would like to do.
Cool. Yeah. Well, we can take this in many directions. I think it might be important to kind of recognize some of the dark aspects of modern Christmas, right? What it is now in its form. That way, it's almost using the apothetic method, right? We can recognize what this time period today and how it affects, kind of the biosphere. And I'll run through some of these lists, and we can kind of take it whichever way, right? So, I mean, the most obvious one is, a hyper consumerism, right? It's the largest commercial ritual. That's what this is. So it's based in materialism and, debt slavery. Just think about how many people max out credit cards or take out credit cards during this time of year. It's based on this fake, and diluted gratification that, you're expressing your love for your partner or for your family or for your children by showering them with gifts, right? And of course, I'm talking about the dark aspects as an imbalance. That's not to say, giving a gift to your loved one, to your kids or something like that is wrong, but there is a healthy balance to it, right? If you're going into debt or you're maxing out credit cards or even using credit cards to shower gifts for this kind of this fake expression of love, then that's obviously a dark aspect. It's a manufactured happiness, right? That's kind of going, and that the cultural pressure is there. We can see how quick stores can get all the Christmas decorations right after Halloween, and they really put the emotional pressure on people to do that, and that creates dysfunction in families as well. There's guilt. You feel obligated. There's conflict. And then, moving on to some of the more deeper spiritual aspects, it's taking away from the indigenous or the ancestral roots that we all have, right? Not understanding these origins, not understanding what the solstice time period is. Soul meaning the sun, meaning your own soul, Soul, and what this time period can be utilized for, right? That process of transformation and initiation. And of course, since modern Christmas and Santa Claus, that archetype has been around, parents have used this as a mind control structure, right? Santa as behavioral surveillance. Rick, you and I talked about this in a show a while back, right? I mean, Santa Claus is a really good analogy for even the belief in government, the belief in human authority, right? Parents use it as behavior control on their children, right? You better be nice this year, and Santa's always watching. He always knows if you've been bad or good, moral or immoral, right? But then, of course, those children get to a certain age and they grow out of it, meaning they recognize the lie that their parents were propagating, and they grow out of that, but yet they have children of their own, and then they do the same thing. So it's generational mind control that is propagated. Same thing with the belief in government, right? So there's that aspect, those analogies and archetypes that are being used in a negative, in a dark aspect of control. Environmental waste, plastic from the packaging and disposables and all that kind of stuff. And then, this is all these dark aspects have been manufactured by the industrial complex primarily, right? During the time period of like the early 1900s, the 1930s is really when it's sunk in for consumerism and materialism by the industrial complex. And that takes away from the sacredness of what this time period is about, the rebirth of consciousness, the cosmic cycle of nature, the return to light, and that real gratitude that is there. So it's really lost its spiritual potency of what this time period is. So those are some of the dark aspects. I'll pass it over to Logan.
Yeah, absolutely, Logan. I know you got something to say on this part, so yeah, go ahead.
Yes, well, I think Will did a great job hitting those key points of what are the dark aspects of Christmas. And yeah, I guess I could kind of just go over and add my own commentary to each of those. So the consumerism obviously is a big one. And I wanted to point out that if anyone has listened to all of the chats that we've done here on the show together during this holiday breakdown season, that's the one that comes up every single time, whether it's Halloween or Easter. It's like, how much cheap plastic crap, from China can you buy to decorate and do all the festivities and stuff, and then just throw it all away and toss it in the landfill, and just do the same thing all over again next year. It's really just low consciousness, irresponsible behavior. And then, as Will said, it's so performative, right? And putting all the emphasis on materialism of, you can't possibly love someone if you're not showing it by buying them things. It's like, I'm going to prove to everyone how much I love my family by how much stuff I can buy them this year. And then, of course, you got to outdo yourself every year. If you buy them less this year than you did last year, well, then you must love them less. And you're going the wrong direction. And then that teaches the kids this entitlement too. Cause it's like, well, I mean, it makes me think of that in, Harry Potter when, what's it? The chubby stepbrother or whatever. It's like, last year I had 47 presents. And, so, so yeah, it's not good all around, and it's not teaching your kids any true character or what's important in life and all of that kind of stuff. And it's not about the gratitude of even getting the gifts, but how many you got and what that means as a sort of a status symbol or whatever, I don't know. So that's just that point. And then, yeah, great points you brought up about the mind control technique, because yeah, it's not even about true moral behavior either. It's the authoritarian parent mindset of it's not about, are you actually being naughty or nice? It's, are you being obedient? Are you, following all my dictates, regardless of whether it has to do with morality? It's just being an obedient slave, and then you'll get rewarded with material possessions, and using that to control them in the other direction, and not teaching them natural consequences and natural law and karma, but, well, if you don't do everything I say, then I'll withhold my love in the form of gifts and toys and things like that. So there's just so many layers of dysfunction and toxicity to that. And it's just really a great kind of depiction of the spiritual sickness that we are suffering from at large.
Yeah.
I'll add something. Logan, you brought something up that I think is important, right? Like this time period in, modern Christmas, the ads, the influence, the marketing, it very much directed to women, right? Because this time period is there's that feminine component. Sure, you have the sun, which is a masculine symbol. It's active, but yet the gestation period or the winter, it's the womb of gestation for creation itself. There's a feminine component to this that I think kind of comes into play. And when they market any type of the purchasing power towards women, and it's really severing that spiritual connection to what? It's really to the earth itself and to the sun, right? You have the earth, Mother Earth, Father, Son. So there's this unity that happens during this time period of the sun, dipping down at its lowest point, going through that gestation, that womb, and then being the rebirth of itself. So there's this masculine and feminine unity that is there. But we see in kind of modern time period of this holiday, there's a lot of marketing directed to, women on material possessions, which then has a certain effect on men itself, right? Men being wanting to be devoted to their woman and provide for them. And if there's that imbalance of, I need, all of these gifts or all this type of makeup or fancy trips or a brand new car, if that materialism is really set in there, that's where the disconnection and almost the progression of the sickness comes into play, right? So there's always a rhyme and a reason why the social engineers utilize this time period energetically and consciously, to affect the field of awareness.
Yeah, that's such a great point, Will. And the one thing I'm noticing, and I've noticed this through the whole Origin series that we've done, and you guys have really done a great job of laying the foundation of where the origins of these holidays come from. We're speaking about Christmas, and I think in the first hour, you and Logan really broke down the true origins of Christmas. And then in the second hour, we've kind of went into how it has been inverted and hijacked and made the way it is now. And I think I find that super interesting, but very disturbing, in a lot of ways, how they've taken something from what its origins were that we spoke about in the first hour, and now we're kind of covering what it's been turned into. It's this, yeah, everything you guys are saying, this materialistic, and I think of like this soulless thing that's just based on, it's morphed into this like creature to me that is like, so there's nothing really, it's just not really based on anything now like it should be. It's this hollow version of it. Like you said, this consumerism, and how much are you willing to spend? And this is how you show your love. And then not to mention the lie, which I'm glad you guys brought that up, because I remember when I found out that Santa wasn't real, I was so upset with my parents. I was like, why? I mean, and then people say, well, there's no harm. This is a tradition, as you said, Will, this is something that all families do and stuff like that. But you have to look deeper. And that's what I find interesting, is that, you start this lie very young with your children. Now, who knows how that affects the way they look at you, maybe, or maybe they don't look at you with the same trust. Like, there's a lot to unpack from something that seems innocent, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I really
Yeah,
agree
for sure.
with that. Yeah, it's very indicative, as I said, of most everything that is a part of pop culture nowadays. It's this bastardized version of something that came before that had a much more spiritual meaning. And you said it perfectly. It's become this like hollow version of it. And I also agree that a lot, having the parents participate in that lie, it's like, it sounds extreme, but to me, it's kind of like generational trauma.
Right.
I'm not saying that act itself is the generational trauma, but it's like it's symbolic of all the other things that parents pass down to their children in that way, that are mind control mechanisms without even realizing it. And in this case, they think, oh, it's all just for fun. And, well, my parents did it to me. It's just like, that's the same thing of the cycle of abuse. They're just passing that down. Instead of breaking the cycle, they're like, well, now I have to do it to my kids to keep it going, and never questioning that, or is this really for their best interest?
Yeah. Really, yeah, it's crazy. Like, and then think of how far the deception goes now to with modern technology, is that now, you can log onto a website and track Santa. You can have your kids sit there tracking Santa and where he is in the world and stuff. And I'm like, wow, like they've put a lot into this. And I don't think, and it seems like you guys keep saying, and I keep saying, it seems harmless. And I'm sure in a lot of ways it probably is. I mean, but there's got to be a negative to it. And I just remember, and I want people to think back to when you did find out that Santa wasn't real, and there's something there where it does something, like you're upset, and then you're angry. I know I was like, why the charade, like the charade, the charade or whatever, like why this whole deception, and my parents had me putting cookies out and milk out and sugar and all this crazy shit they had me doing. And I was just like, why? Like, I don't know. What do you think, Will? I remember getting upset like, about the
Yeah, well, there's this larger system of control that's in place. I mean, and even kind of going back to the historical points, where, the church chose December 25th, centuries later as the birth of Jesus, when it's actually not, from the Bible, right? There's no biblical evidence that supports a winter birth. And actually there's more evidence from the story of the Bible that Jesus was born in the spring itself. But the reason why the church chose the 25th, it was to integrate the pagan society, right? The solstice celebrations, to integrate that into, for a smoother transition. So it's all about kind of, reformation and controlling and swaying the populace to a certain direction itself. And if you know, and if you're aware, then you can be aware. And I think that's important. So yeah.
Yeah, all of this is really important. What you guys are speaking about. Damn, I keep hitting my mic. I apologize. Yeah, you guys are. This is really important, and I hope people are really listening and really just thinking. And my goal is to have people look into this deeper and really question things, especially in this origin series. Is I think important because as I keep saying, at risk of repeating myself over and over, is that many celebrate these holidays and we don't really have a true understanding of where the origins of the true meanings of them are, because as you guys have both said perfectly, they've been hijacked and inverted and really, to me, cheapened. Now I can't speak how I would have when how I would react to this as a child when I found that the Santa wasn't real and Christmas and stuff. But if I would have known the true origins, to me, I think it would have meant so much more. Like then and I think about what you were saying, Logan, it comes down to this commercialism and people buying plastic stuff and just all this stuff. And I think about, because of the winter solstice and the time of the year, I would think that the importance to me would be having, and I hope I say this right, this time of year would be so much more important and is important to me if I'm with the people I love and I'm sharing a meal, because, back, not too long ago in our past, at this time of year, a meal to me would seem so much more valuable because of the time of the year. Food is not easy to come by. To me, there's something really meaningful there. Being with somebody in the warmth of a fire, surrounded by community, around family, exchanging a meal, exchanging stories, exchanging you know what I'm saying? Than what it is now, which is just how much shit can you buy somebody? And this is what it's devolved to. Do I make a sense, or am I going off on a rant?
For sure. And I would love to expand on that a little bit because of something really profound that Will said was the importance of the feminine aspect to this season and why the marketing is often so targeted towards women. Everything you're describing there to me is like part of that feminine aspect of the summertime is the invert where, the sun is out and you're out in the world doing action. You're building things. That's all that very masculine energy. And in the wintertime, it's cold outside. You don't really want to be out there doing. You've kind of done all the work all year to prepare for this so that you can just kind of relax and enjoy the warmth, enjoy the good smell of it's the woman that makes the house a home, right? So you've got those cinnamony, spicy smells, and the pie is baking, and it's warm and jolly, and you're with family, right? So you're very connected and in a loving space, just enjoying each other's company. That's all feminine stuff, and just that sort of, it's time to relax and enjoy the fruits of your labor and be glad that you're not, you're surviving another year now. Like you're going to make it through. You had enough of a bountiful harvest that you can live another year. And there's a lot to be grateful for too. I think it's no coincidence, Thanksgiving and Christmas are right next to each other because it's kind of in that order. You have the harvest, there's a bounty, and then you have a big meal and a feast to celebrate that abundance and the family and all that kind of stuff. And Christmas has a lot in common with Thanksgiving in that it's all centered around food and family and just sharing a nice space together. I think that is important, and that is some of the kind of leftover value that's still in these holidays. It's not completely soulless yet. There's still some of those positive elements that I think are important to really highlight and emphasize there.
Yeah. You want to add to that, Will?
Yeah. No, well said. I'm loving that. And I totally agree with the feminine attribute of that time of reconnection, and rest and rejuvenation. I mean, you even think about the plant kingdom, right? It's like, what's the winter time like? What are trees doing? What are just any type of plant? All of it, the majority of its energy or all of its energy is going right to the roots, right? And the root system is being strengthened and expands more underground. And that's what the winter time is for sure. And, it's no coincidence, right? There's always a rhyme and reason in nature why you have and why you would have a celebration of Thanksgiving and then the solstice, right? Logan explained it beautifully. And this is kind of how I see kind of what I call evolutionary animism or evolutionary paganism, just to try to explain to someone it's not about going to the past. It's about understanding the past and the now and nature and then evolving from there. And there is a rhythm of life and also a rhythm of death. It's all about where are you going to step? What stream are you going to step in? Right. And as humanity in the collective, we absolutely are not on that path. We're not in that slipstream of the flow of life, the flow of evolution and creation. And this is where the knowledge and understanding of the origins of these time periods are really important, because you have that awareness and that information. You might do something differently this year. You might focus on the family connection and having good quality family time, versus, working extra hours to get extra money, to buy extra gifts, etc. Right? So, and that's what it's all about. It's all about the influence. And I think one thing we're lacking in the modern age, and again, there's a reason for that, are the modern traditions, right? When we think about mythology, right? The mythos. So it's, stories with logic is how I define mythology. And meaning that there's truth embedded in these stories, whether it's archetypal, there's, analogies, metaphors based in truth, in nature, in reality. We don't have that. We don't have a modern connotation of these stories or this truth or the cyclical nature, cycles of nature in the modern day, right? So that's, I think, as humanity evolves and we step into that rhythm of life, we step into that slipstream of creation, what starts to flower and bloom from there is these traditions and these stories that are more in harmony and more in symbiosis with nature and life in general. And I think that's where this knowledge and information can really be empowering for the future.
Yeah, I'm thinking about how you said that there's no modern. Now you got me really thinking. This is what happens when I get you guys on. You get me thinking about certain things, and I'm like, you're right. There's no modern. Yeah.
Well, I think, modern, mythology, you could probably equate to like movies, right? Like like The Matrix. That's kind of like a modern mythology. It's very archetypal. It resonates a lot with truth for the modern age. Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a reason why these movies or stories resonate so hard with people, right? Like Aragorn in The Lord of the Rings. He is the archetype of morality.
Right.
And, people, they love that. They love Neo. They cheer on for the archetype of someone doing the right thing or aligning with truth. Beating the evil or the system of control, right? But again, there's that disconnect from the mythology, the story / the movie or story, and reality within themselves. Meaning we are all Neo. We could be Neo. We could be Aragorn, right? But there's that lack of connection. And that's actually where the animist mindset really can be utilized.
In the movies, they're cheering for the hero, the Aragorn and the Neo, and then in real life, they're cheering for the orcs and the agents and the machines and Sauron. You know,
That's right.
it's quite shocking to actually see that. But yeah, that's great, because in the modern mind, especially in the West, where we're very inculcated in the left brain materialism / Christianity mindset, it's a very sterile mindset, and it's the antithesis to paganism. So there's a huge disconnect between the movies and real life. Whereas a pagan, everything is allegorical. Everything has some kind of message or wisdom that can be extrapolated. So it's not even about the movies. It's like, a feather lands on your shoulder, or some coincidence or synchronicity or whatever it may be. A pagan is always looking at the sort of poetic symbolism in everything, because there's so much there, and somewhat that's not in that. They're ignoring and missing out on all of that.
Yeah, you're so right. And that's the thing, is this disconnect from, and that's the one thing I've noticed too with all of this origin series that we've done, is that the more we speak about it and we get into these holidays, and it's not just the holidays, but it's just a great example, is this disconnect from nature that is happening. And I think I worry that if we're not careful, we're going to lose the true meaning of what we're speaking about. It's, as we said, it's kind of like this, I call it like this Frankenstein version is what's happening to all of these holidays that we're speaking about, and a lot of other things. But since we're covering this is about holidays, I'm keeping it in that theme. But it's not just the holidays, but we're losing some of these values and traditions, and they're being, the word that comes to me is pasteurized. I'm just being really honest. Like, it's this version, and I worry that if we're not careful with a lot of other things, we're going to lose what you guys are speaking about, where these origins come from. And it sounds silly, but I think it's already happening. And if we're not careful, we're going to lose it. And I think if that ever happens, what a tragedy to lose something so important in who we are, and these things in all aspects, how they affect us in our lives, and this connection that you guys are breaking down perfect. I worry that this could happen. It sounds kind of silly when you say it, but we're seeing it. We're losing the true meaning of some of these things, and they're so important. Their teachings are so important, I've found. And when you start to, how many people don't even know, like we were saying, when they hear the word pagan or paganism, like, what does their mind go to right away? I mean, I'd be really curious, if they were honest, this where it goes to. And yeah, like, what do you guys think? I just worry about certain things, because this is really important, and I don't want to ever see that get to the point where it's so diluted that, because as you were saying, Logan, there's still some remnants, about, like, at Christmas you have a meal, at Thanksgiving, so there's some, they haven't taken it all away, but it's a slippery slope we're on. What are you guys' thoughts on what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And this is, kind of our personal goal, Logan and I, and you, Rick, right? This is what it's about. It's about publicly educating, or even putting ideas out publicly for others to take in, consider, understand, flush out, respond to. And it's just that conversation that we are kind of, blessed in a way that this is the silver lining of the internet. We're able to reach a global level. We're able to reach, hundreds, maybe thousands of minds to put any type of information out for consideration, and other people can do the same thing. So that's how you spread an idea. That's how you evolve on a concept. That's how you can influence behavior. And this is how people change as well, right? This is why millions of dollars go into ad spend and marketing. It's all about influencing and controlling perception.
Right.
So
Yeah.
even Christmas, right? In its modern form, how many people understand the symbolism? Because it's really, I mean, how people celebrate Christmas nowadays has a heavy influence on Norse pagan festival, right? I mean, the evergreen Christmas tree, candlelight, candles, the Yule log, all kinds of things. Even Santa Claus, like Logan said, the archetype of Odin, winter spirits. I mean, there's a heavy influence on just even the modern culture behind these holidays, but majority of people are even oblivious to what the symbols mean. And explaining that to the youth, I think, is really important, right? The 12 days of Christmas is another good symbolism, right? It's the 12 signs of the zodiac. It's 12 months of the solar cycle. There's so much there. We talked about the masculine and feminine dynamic. You have with the plants, the foliage, you have the holly and the ivy, right? It's the masculine and feminine. Mistletoe is druidic magic. So there's so much symbolism there, and it's important to explore that.
I agree. And it's beautiful. The symbolism is so beautiful the way we're talking about it, and when you really dive into it and start to understand it, at least for me, it's just like, it's so perfect when you really get down to what we're speaking about, and you see the beauty and the wisdom in it and the meaning in it. And the symbolism is really important. So I'm glad that's kind of brought up. Do you want to add anything, Logan? I want to make sure I keep giving the microphone back to you.
Absolutely. In fact, this idea just came to me. So great timing there. The idea of not getting caught in a dialectic here, because we're talking about how things get distorted, but why they're distorted, because they can't be destroyed, because they root back to something nature, and they can't actually destroy nature. They could even destroy the planet. But again, going back to what I said, when I say nature, I don't just mean trees and ecosystems or whatever. I'm talking about natural law. It's everywhere in the entire universe. They cannot destroy that. They cannot even usurp its authority. That's why everything they do is about how they can find loopholes and manufacture consent and do disclosure and all of these things to offset the karmic backlash of what they are doing, because they know about natural law and that they can't stop it. So my point is, it's so important to not throw out the baby with the bathwater and think, oh, all these holidays are just BS because they're just consumerist, holidays, and they don't mean anything anymore. That would be just as unfortunate as being completely caught up in not questioning it all and just going through all the motions and getting caught up in that. To me, the key to empowerment here is to reclaim these traditions that go back so far and connect you to your ancestors, connect you to nature, connect you to true values, and remind you of things that are important. And that's really the value here. And it's called thinking for yourself. Because if you just have that knee-jerk reaction to, oh, it's all controlled and manipulated anyways, and you just reject that, that's just as predictable and not really thoughtful and autonomous as discernment and recognizing the value that is there, that can be reclaimed when you choose that. And when you do so mindfully, and again, recognizing what is valuable here, what's worth holding on to, because that's the idea to me about tradition. Why is so much about these nature cultures, pagan cultures, about tradition? Because what better tradition is there than nature itself? The cycles that continue over and over again, and an intelligence an intelligent being is capable of pattern recognition and seeing these cycles that repeat and saying, hey, there's power in this. Maybe the more I align myself and my own life to these cycles that can't be stopped, they can't be controlled, but they can be harnessed or utilized by jumping in the stream with a strong current. You're not trying to direct it or stop the river from flowing. You're like using that power.
Right.
That's where true power comes from. It comes from nature within yourself. And the more we align to nature, this is like the highest truth of all teachings. The more we align ourselves with nature rather than fighting it, the more we are naturally empowered.
Great point. And when you said like kind of jump into the stream, the first thing I thought of, just where I just always honest where I think of Logan as a surfer. You know what I mean? Like they kind of have to go against the waves to get out there, but look at the beauty of when they catch that wave and they get in the flow of it. So maybe people can kind of think of it that way, in a silly way. But to me, that's what I thought of. It's like riding this wave and you're not fighting it. And you know what happens when you try to fight against these things, not good things. So I know, Will, because you guys are, I know you're going to want to comment on this because natural law was brought up and a lot of great points that Logan brought up. So I want to give you the opportunity to build upon this.
Yeah, no, fantastic, Logan. That was great, and I love that, Rick. Right, because the surfer can't change the wave.
Right. Yeah.
All he has control of, or her has control of, is how he or her acts and utilizes that wave coming in. Right, and there's a rhythm, and you can catch that wave and ride it in there. But yes, I think that's extremely important for people to take in. You know, one of the biggest takeaways that what Logan was talking about with the dialectics, and they're ramping up. Like it's so obvious. You can see that there's this societal and cultural pressure to pick a side, and whether that's political, even spiritual, it's having to be on one side of the dialectic, and that's obviously just as dangerous as being, they're both two extremes, and they don't benefit the self and the whole. It is all about that middle path and being in balance. So yeah, no, I agree with everything he said. And I think one of the biggest things for just for understanding the holidays is the cultural religions itself. And they have such a big hold because, look, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's trending to be more in tune with nature. I've seen this. Maybe you guys can comment as well. It seems like more people want to be closer to nature. They want to be in alignment with what is natural, etc., right? But the important part is, what does that actually mean? What does it mean to be human? This is where understanding these cycles, understanding the symbolism, where it gives it meaning to what actually is important. Right or wrong, morality, the self, where you're at and your 0 point and your progression on just evolving in this life experience, what the human condition is, and having that accurate perception, all to elevate your perception and to affect your behavior, the actions that you are trying to take. In this time period of dialectics, and pick a side, both sides are essentially stand-down movements, psyops. And even if someone does take action, they're acting from that reactive imbalance of the dialectic itself. So when, I make a comment about people need to, educate others, right? We're striving for that holistic intelligence of understanding that a dialectic does exist, and exposing what both sides of the dialectics, and then being that example of what a middle path would be. And no one's going to have it 100%. There is no perfection in this experience, but yet we can strive for what is true and what is right. And we can convey that to the public, and we can show that within our own lives through our action and behavior.
Great point. And action, that is the part, Will, I'm glad you kind of touched on that, because I think that's the action aspect of what we're speaking about is really lacking. I just think that more people need to get active. It's that simple. It really is. It's in their own, I keep saying, in your own unique, creative way. I don't, find a way of something you're passionate about, but there is a way to take action and get involved. And it's like you guys are both saying, you have to get this information out there, and it's so important that we do that. I keep saying that because I truly believe that, and I know it is. And I would love to get your thoughts, Logan, because time is, once again, I wish we had another hour, but time is ticking away here, and I want to make sure I give you a chance to comment on what Will was saying and give your thoughts on that.
I honestly don't have anything to add to what Will said. I think he summed it up perfectly.
Perfect.
I'm right to talk about Ostara or something.
Yes, definitely. Let's wrap up the last 15 minutes. Whoever, do you want to talk about it, Logan? And then, Will, if you want to add anything, you guys have a great company and a business, and I would love for you to guys take the last 10 minutes to let people know about it.
Yeah, so Will and I are business partners. We started Ostara Hydrogen as a solution for the very real health crisis that we're all experiencing. We just spent the last 2 hours talking about nature and the importance of nature. Well, hydrogen is a completely natural and non-harmful molecule that helps your body in a plethora of ways. And the more Will and I learned about it, we decided we wanted to go all in and create a business that could offer affordable options to let people get access to this and learn how it works and get them activated and consistently using it so it can be allowed to transform their health. And so that's exactly what we've done. And it's a very new company, but we've achieved something we're proud of building all of the infrastructure and aligning with really good quality manufacturers of the devices that we're offering people. And we've created a podcast and webinars and all sorts of free resources for people to educate themselves on how hydrogen works, all the many ways it can benefit them. And people can, check those out on our website at ostarahydrogen.com, get the webinar, watch the podcast, whatever you feel called towards in that direction, or even book a call with us if you want to chat with us about if it could help you with something specific that answer your questions about something you're trying to navigate or get some assistance with. Will, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, that was great. And I'll kind of touch on a super crash course on molecular hydrogen itself. And mark our words, you're going to see more and more. You're going to see hydrogen therapy. It's already trending in the West, and it's gaining just vast amount of popularity compared to the East in the Asian countries, where it's very well established and is far ahead from the West. So the reason why you're going to see it, it's because it works, and it is a natural component. In fact, hydrogen itself is the most abundant element in the universe, comprising the universe, about 95% of all atoms. Light itself, the human body generates small amounts of molecular hydrogen, but it's crucial for the gut biome. And molecular hydrogen, hydrogen is, the first element on the periodic table. It's the smallest molecule. So when you take hydrogen therapy, it's so small that it can easily penetrate all layers of the human body, even even to the mitochondria, and that's where it really works its magic. It's considered a selective antioxidant. It's selective because hydrogen, it almost has this intelligence. It's really the nature of what hydrogen does in the body. It neutralizes the most harmful free radicals in the body itself. So not only can it, get to the gut, it can get to the cellular membrane, and the mitochondria can pass the blood-brain barrier with ease. And there's zero cytotoxic effects, meaning you could take as much of it as you like. You could breathe hydrogen all day, and your body will utilize what it needs, and it dissipates, through when you exhale or straight out of your pores, actually. So it's very different from traditional antioxidants like vitamin C, ascorbic acid, where there is a saturation limit. I mean, even water itself has a cytotoxic saturation limit, right? You could drink too much water and it can have dire consequences. That's not the case with molecular hydrogen. In total, there's a little over 3,000 studies, about over 1,500 studies for human trials. And it has, profound benefits across the board with over 288, I believe, human disease models. And that is growing, and the evidence is there. If someone's very much into kind of clinical data, you can check that out even on our website. We provide a lot of the great studies on ostarhydrogen.com. And, we focus on, first and foremost, the awareness, right? You have to be educated. You need correct information on what molecular hydrogen is, what hydrogen therapy is, the modalities. And then, like Logan said, we take great care and integrity with the devices that we have partnered with these manufacturers for just safe conditions, effectiveness. We want machines that are going to get people to that therapeutic zone. We have a fantastic high quality water bottle, which most people are kind of familiar with these hydrogen water bottles, but yet there's still so much information and awareness left versus a modality like inhalation, which is, can be 300 to 1,000 times the effectiveness of the H2 that it produces. So yeah, awareness, access, and then activation. Activation being people can get involved with educating the public and also generating resources in this, because it comes down to helping people, and that's what we're very passionate about, whether that's from psychology and education to the physicality of help, assisting your body.
Right. You guys are both doing that. Go ahead, Logan.
I was going to say, maybe we could talk a little bit more just about the benefits, because I think that's what people are most interested in learning about it.
Okay, just like we know, Logan, we got 3 minutes. So just so you can have the last 3 minutes. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, great. So, I mean, there's many, many benefits. It's going to vary, obviously, per person based on where you're at physically, what chronic ailments, what your age is, all these kind of things. But generally, increased quality of sleep is one of my favorite benefits that I get from it. That's and that's so consistent. Clearer skin, improved energy levels, mental clarity and cognition, memory, improved recovery. So whether you're an athlete and you do weight training and things like this, or you'd say you just help your friend move, and normally you'd be wiped out for a day or two, you'll notice that your body is recovering much faster from greater exertions and things like that. That's just to name a few. Will, if you have some more.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, molecular hydrogen, it's anti-inflammation, anti-allergy, anti-obesity, anti-diabetic, anti-tumor, anti-cellular death. It actually initiates apoptosis, meaning if you have damaged cells, it'll initiate that cell death, simultaneously enhancing and rejuvenating young, healthy cells. anti-radiation. Obviously, 5G frequencies and EMF is a big issue nowadays. Molecular hydrogen is anti-radiation, which is really good. Neuroprotective, mitochondria protective and repair, increases cellular energy, and it upregulates antioxidants as well. So, and that's just to name a few. So these are all kind of the effects of the nature of molecular hydrogen.
Wow, we're gonna have to do a show, guys, just on this. Holy smokes, because I mean, the health benefits are crazy, but we are down to the last minute. I want to give it to you both. I already put a link for what you're speaking about, your company. It's in the chat room, but where can people find your work? Will, you go first. Logan, bring it up. We got 1 minute. Where can people find your work?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Appreciate you. All my work can be found at willkeller.com. Very easy. I love this episode. I love working with both you guys on these episodes. So thank you so much. And thank to the audience for their time and attention.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, this was a ton of fun. I'm very happy with everything we were able to cover today. Hopefully it was informative and enlightening and inspiring to everyone that tuned in. My name is Logan Hart. If you'd like to check out more of my work, you can go to thewizardfactory.com and follow my YouTube channel, follow me on social media. And there's plenty to get into there. So thanks for watching.
All right. Matt, thank you guys. Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. What an amazing series. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please go back and check it. I'm going to provide links in the chat for all of their links that they just mentioned, guys. So please go check them out. Support them. They're doing it. They're putting action out there, and they're trying to make everything a lot better, a world a better place. Thank you guys for tuning in. I will be back, of course, on Thursday. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Logan. Amazing. Guys, have a great evening.